So the next method I'm going to show you is using Adobe Illustrator. This method involves combining and modifying geometric shapes in order to create your character. And it's ideal especially for somebody who's not all that comfortable with drawing. So I'm going to open up a document in Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to do Create New, and I'm going to create a document for print. Then I'm going to go up to the menu, to the windows, and I'm going to open up the color menu. The color menu isn't normally open by default. So now I'm going to select the color I want. The solid square is for the fill, and the outlined square is for the line color. So the line color is black, and I'm now picking the fill. With Illustrator, you don't draw the lines and fill in the color later. You pick the color right at the beginning because it's an integral part of the picture you're building. Now I'm going to go to the Shape tool, and I'm going to pick an ellipse with a fill of gray. And now I want to modify that ellipse with the Warp tool. So right now I only have the basic tools showing. So there's a hidden toolbar at the top with just a few little lines. And I'm going to switch to Advanced Tools. And I'm going to find the Warp tool, which is hidden just underneath hidden within the Width tool when you have the Advanced Tool settings. Now with the Warp tool, you can change the shape of the ellipse just by pulling it out and giving it an animal snout. So I'm going to use the Warp tool to change the shape, and then I'm going to use the Polygon tool to make the ear. Now, right now it's a hexagon, but hidden underneath the pen tool is a tool that allows you to delete anchor points. So by deleting 2 points, I turn it into a triangle. Then I can select it, move it, and then I can use the Warp tool to slightly change its shape by pulling out the anchor points. Now I can do Edit Copy, Edit Paste, but then in order to flip it, I've got to go Object, Transform, Reflect, and that'll give me the mirror image for the other ear, so I have symmetry. So now I'm going back to the Polygon tool, and I'm going to make a nose, and then I'm going to delete anchor points using the hidden pen tool to make the nose. And now I'm going to go back and use the ellipse tool to make the eye. And you can see I changed the fill to black for the nose and the eyes. And I'm using Edit Copy, Edit Paste, Object, Transform, Reflect to make the mirror image second eye. Now, unlike Photoshop, if you want to rotate an object, all you have to do is select it and you can rotate it. You can also warp or change the width of an object by just pushing in the sides or pulling out the end to make it longer and thinner. This is different from Photoshop, where you actually have to do Edit Transform. In Illustrator, you want to change a shape, you can just select it. As a matter of fact, in Illustrator, if you want to keep the aspect ratio the same and you don't want the shape to warp, you have to hold the Shift key down so that the width and height remain the same relative to each other. Whereas in Photoshop, if you're changing the size, you don't hold the Shift key down, and it will automatically keep the aspect ratio the same. In Illustrator, it's the opposite. So I'm just going to keep on adding shapes, and when I want to add more organic details, I'm going to switch to the paintbrush tool. So I'm going to make sure the line is selected for black or whatever color I want. I'm going to switch to the paintbrush tool, and I'm going to start drawing the lines for the raccoon stripes. The brush tool works very similarly in Photoshop as it does in Illustrator. The difference in Photoshop and Illustrator are that Illustrator perceives everything as a grouping of separate shapes, and it understands that the shapes are separate objects even though they're all in the same layer. You can easily select all the shapes at once just by dragging the selection tool over everything and treat the image as if it's a single entity, but you can also directly select specific shapes to modify them. This makes it slightly easier to use Illustrator for creating pictures than Photoshop, because in Photoshop, each of these shapes would end up being in a different layer, and you'd have to switch from layer to layer in order to modify each shape.